Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast, episode number 88. And we have a lot to get into today. But before we get into all that, Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. That was just pumped after that Rangers win that nearly had me nervous the last couple of last bit of that third quarter. Just had me, please don't blow this. So somehow we won it, and I'm still kind of pissed off at the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm talking about you, Sebastian Aho.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a tough game the other night, no doubt about that. But the Rangers end up eking that one out, as you mentioned, 5-3. So that's a big win. Obviously, we got a lot to get into tonight. Like I said, we're going to be taping this live as the Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs tip off at the Garden. Knicks off to a early 20-8 lead. So nice to see the Knicks out there. Our two football teams took two tough losses on the chin this weekend. We'll get into that a little bit later. But you know what, Dan? I thought that because the team that we probably spend the most time talking about on this show is our beloved New York Mets. And the Mets had some interesting news this week, so I figured, you know what, let's shake things up. Let's get off our football. Obviously it's football season, so we're knee-deep in it right now. But let's start this show off talking a little baseball, a little hot stove action for you, Dan, as we had the breaking news the other day that the New York Mets hired former bench coach of the New York Yankees under Aaron Boone, Carlos Mendoza, has been named the Mets' next manager for the 2023 season heading forward. And this was the hand-picked candidate by David Stearns. Unfortunately, the Mets were rebuked by Craig Counsell, who leaves Milwaukee not for the bright lights of New York, but to go to the Chicago Cubs. So Craig Counsell is off the board for the Mets. And we are now in a situation where, once again, a former Yankee is going to be running the ship here for the Mets. And Dan, what are your initial reactions to hearing that Mendoza is the Mets' next manager?
Well, this one I don't know what to make of this one. I feel this one's an unknown. Maybe I guess there's some. I guess he can have some credibility because he has been a bench coach on some teams that made the playoffs, even though I don't know, they didn't fare well. I guess maybe there's that. Maybe he does have experience in the high pressure of New York, so that might be a credibility to that. Of course, also I do have to look. I was reminded this a certain manager by the name of Davey Johnson never managed, was a rookie manager. We do know how that story ended.
Yeah, but Davey Johnson, to be fair, was at least the AAA manager and won the AAA World Series as the manager the year before in 83 when he took over for the Mets in 84. So at least Davey Johnson had that background as a manager who also managed a lot of those young kids on those teams. He managed Ron Darling and Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry in the minor leagues. With this Mendoza character, look, I got to say, I'm kind of with you on this. I don't know much about the guy. I don't know anything about him. I couldn't tell you one thing about his background. And all I have to say is, hey, David Stearns, this better be the right choice. We better not be sitting here in May and June saying, who the hell is this guy Carlos Mendoza? He doesn't know how to run a team. This, I got to say, David Stearns, this is a huge hire, and you better be right, or it is going to be a massive, massive problem immediately for this team.
Yeah, exactly. It just better turn out because I just feel this guy. I, I would be shocked if I would be shocked if he even lasts what if he even goes if he even has managed 2 years if it doesn't go well. This year one is going to be a big make or break if this is going to affect if that decision was the right thing because this is a rookie man, it's a rookie manager that has major experience. I just hope for the sake of it they bring in at least some decent coaching staff. A bench coach that maybe he's had some managerial experience, but I just feel unfortunately we were also dealt with a horrible hand because Greg Council he was just using us to try to get just falling the bags of money and just I don't even think he wanted to manage the Mets. I just feel like he was just using it as a bargaining chip to try to get to for another team closer to the Midwest, and that's what he did.
Well, I think you're definitely right about that, Dan. I think you're spot on because we heard early on in the courtship of Craig Counsell that the you know the it, a lot of people early on said that he wanted to leave Milwaukee only to set the bar high for other managers and break that salary threshold that had been sitting at Joe Torre's $8 million for more than a decade. It's been a long time since any manager even approached that number, and now Craig Counsell's going to be getting over 9. So he said that he's kind of opening the doors for other managers and for the future to get that dollar number up for them. But I do agree with you because I think he had no interest in coming to New York. I think he's a Midwest guy. He wanted to stay in the Midwest, and Chicago is kind of like a mix of kind of being in a big city like New York, but not really, but also still being in the Midwest. So I guess, he did what was right for himself and his family, and, I wish nothing but the best for Craig Counsell. But now we are in a situation here where we have an unknown. And this is another reason why I don't understand why they fired Buck Showalter. You had one of the best managers out there, right?
Yeah, I just feel it. I just feel that part of me just feels like that was a mistake firing Buck Showalter. I don't know what that was. I don't know if that was on this point or just Billy I feel like that was more like Billy Epler was still there. That may have been a factor before Billy Epler just decided to just walk away from or get fired before he got fired. That was on him, I think.
No, that wasn't Billy's decision. They said that was David Stearns and Steve Cohen wanting a clean slate so he could hire his own guy. But I don't agree with that thought process at all. I mean, you could have rode this season out with Buck as the manager, and if it went poorly or if you just wanted to make a move, you could have Stearns bring in whoever he wanted next season.
Yeah, exactly. I just felt like he just should have went that route, but unfortunately didn't. We're stuck with this unknown, and I just hope maybe it turns out well, and hopefully so far I haven't been as much with David Stern so far, and I hope I'm wrong. They're coming the off season. I'm hoping I better be seen, especially come by the time the Queens baseball convention happens. I better be seeing some big off season news for the Mets. I want to see a big off season move that's got some buzz at the Queens baseball convention in December.
Hell yeah, man! I couldn't agree more. And you know what? I think right now, as Met fans, even though this is hard, we have to put our faith in David Stearns and just hope that this guy does the right thing. David Stearns is a guy just like us. He grew up a Mets fan. He loves this team. I saw a couple of pictures of the articles. He's been making the media rounds over the last week or two, doing. He was on MLB Network today. He has a full interview with Newsday. He was with the Post. So he's really getting his message out there. And look, to be honest, I just want to win. I'm sick of, being put in these situations every couple of years where they're changing over everything. Now the only thing we have to worry about is off-season moves. I just hope that he does the right thing. Bring in the guys we need, and let's go to war next season and bring back a championship to Queens for the first time since 1986.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see the Mets win a World Series, especially before I start getting the AARP shit in the mail.
That's a good point. Before me and you have to start looking into the AARP and Social Security benefits and everything like that. Come on, let's get a championship in Queens. It's been long enough. They have a good team, but speaking of that team, actually, as just to keep it moving along here, I don't know if you caught this news today, Dan, but it came out today that Mets left-handed starting pitcher, David Peterson, had hip surgery today, and he's going to be out for about 6 or 7 months. So that's another big hole in the Mets rotation. I mean, they say he's unlikely for opening day, but to be honest, I'd be surprised, when you have hip surgery and they're saying that he's going to be out for at least 6 or 7 months. If you think about that, that takes us to May. And then you got to give him another month to ramp himself up into baseball activities. So we're talking maybe June that David Peterson's back next year. So you're going to have to bring in some more starting pitching depth, right?
Yeah, exactly. We got to bring in some more starting pitching depth. Whether it's Yamamoto, probably try to figure out a way to get Shane Bieber. Could be a decent one. Even this one might be more for the long run because of the situation, but still a valuable bat. I mean, a game changer. Of course, I'm paying attention, keeping an eye on Shohei Ohtani, of course, but we also got to get some more pitching that'll be around now, like the other two I mentioned, Yamamoto and Shane Bieber.
Mm-hmm. And a guy who I have my eye on is a guy in Milwaukee who obviously was groomed underneath David Stearns in that organization, Corbin Burns. I've heard his name in some trade rumors. This is a guy that's been one of the better pitchers in the game over the last couple of years. It would not surprise me if the Mets were in on that. And, what would you think about that, Dan? Would you like to see a guy like Corbin Burns come over here?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely love to see him, especially if he's a guy that has a reputation of going deep into games. I feel last year one of the things that was costing us was having to use a lot of bullpen. And that's a key thing in our pitchers being able to go deep into games. Also, this time, getting some decent relief pitching that can be that bridge to Edwin Diaz. Because I feel that was another thing. That was another thing, of course, last year not having we had no closer last year, so it's going to be a lot of things that I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm sure maybe I'm hopeful by the time the Queens Baseball Convention comes around in December, there'll be some big moves made, but I'm expecting there'll be some, of course, continuing a lot of talk about more big moves that need to be made. There'll be a lot of things, especially when you talk about those panels, some of the State of the Met panels they do at the Queens Baseball Convention.
Oh,
and they're going to tell you one of these. And one of these years you got to attend that event one of these years, because that is fun event. That's just a fun event. I know someone who's kind of one of the members of the group that helped organize the event. That kind of works at the event and stuff. Who sold me on buying a ticket. Who convinced me to become part of the tradition of me buying a ticket to attend it every year. A friend of mine, good guy, by the way, who's a fan of the networks, by the way. He knows me for the show also, and a fellow Woodsider, Media Goon, great guy. So I know he likes the Mets. I know he likes the Rangers. I forget who Media Goon roots for in football, but he's a great guy, Media Goon. And I can tell you, he's got one.
You also mentioned actually the bullpen, Dan, too. The thing about the bullpen is that I'm really interested to see how David Stearns goes about rebuilding that bullpen, because if there's one thing that we could tell, it's that Billy Epler had no idea how to build a bullpen, and that goes back to his days in Anaheim.
Yep, exactly. That's one we got to do. I feel that bullpen's gonna be a big thing this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we've seen it. Then how many years when those Milwaukee teams under Stearns were going into the deep in the playoffs, were they relying a lot on that bullpen? Same thing with the Yankees. The Yankees had the bullpen as their big weapon for years and years. The Dodgers, the same thing. So if the Mets want to be in that category, you've really got to get that bullpen better. And obviously Diaz being back is going to be a big help. Ottavino is going to be back in that rotation. In that bullpen, and same thing with Brooks Raleigh. But they're really going to have to bring in at least one more big piece in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like one more big piece they need to get in that bullpen, maybe the eighth inning guy. I would even be okay in them potentially bringing back Robinson.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too.
Yeah, exactly. I know maybe there was a little bit when he was traded to Miami, maybe when they thought he was more. I think he was finally got it back once they put him in an eighth inning role, but it was like kind of shows that he kind of wasn't a closer role. He is a decent eighth inning guy, but definitely didn't. I feel like it didn't suit him well in that closer role, even though he held up well that first half of the season with the Mets. But you could tell he just had he was being overused. As long as he's not in a situation where he's being overused, like what happened this year due to the unfortunate circumstances, I feel he'd be pretty decent as an eighth inning guy.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you on that, Dan. I mean, there is there's definitely a lot of truth to what you just said, and the fact of the matter is that right now the Mets are in a situation where every solution has to be on the table. They have to figure this thing out. Maybe reshuffling the deck and figuring out something like that would be the best thing for them. But I also saw this, Dan, too, by the way, that super agent Scott Boras came out today and said that Pete Alonso is not a polar bear in hibernation, and that he is willing to talk to the Mets about an extension pretty much immediately. And apparently David Stearns and Scott Boras had a very long meeting yesterday to discuss just that thing. So, I mean, I think, in my opinion, the fact that they're talking right now and that Scott Boras had nothing negative to say about the Mets or Stern, I feel like that's a good sign, and that maybe things are trending in the right direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I just feel like maybe this might work better in our favor than I expected, because I know Scott Boras kind of scares us, but I feel maybe it might have been more not just a part of a David Stearns, but a part we got an owner like Steve Cohen who's going to spend the big bucks, and I feel in the end somehow maybe the Pete Alonso is going to be more vocal to Scott Boras about wanting to sign an extension with the Mets. I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. You would think that a guy like a guy like that doesn't come along very often. And I actually just got a notification on my phone that that David Stearns said that the Mets do not intend to trade Pete Alonso, which is also a good thing too, because man, I have just been hearing some crazy takes from Met fans lately who just want to get rid of Pete Alonso, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, I know there's some crazy Met fans, but I feel like most of them want to keep him, and they know. I feel like most of the Met fans, as they've seen, I know there's some that want to, but a lot of them I know want to keep this guy. They know he's a generational talent, and
yeah,
I feel like this is the position player equivalent of when I meant for what Tom Seaver was to pitching with the Mets. I feel that's what we're looking at. This guy is on a potential probably to be one of the greatest position players the Mets have ever had.
Never, have never had a player. You could go back to all the great power hitters the Mets have had in their history. Dave Kingman, Mike Piazza, Todd Hundley, Yoenis Cespedes, and just any of those guys, David Wright, Darryl Strawberry. If you go down that list, man, there's a lot of good power hitters. I don't know if there's a better pure power hitter in the history of the Mets organization than Pete Alonso. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I just feel this guy is going to he's going to put these ridiculous numbers, and I mean these ridiculous numbers not only ridiculous numbers, these are numbers without that the juice. It's legitimate numbers. Yep, exactly. Legitimate numbers. Plus, you got this guy. He's a team player. You also got to give credit. Pete just has this team player mentality. He just always had this ability that he was always. He just flew in under the radar, but he just put in all the effort to get to where he is, and once he got there to the big leagues, he didn't stop. He just kept his foot on that gas and kept pushing forward in that to put every effort in it to win. And I feel like Pete's just a winning player. That's just putting in all the effort on his part to win. And that's the kind of player you want on this team. And I feel especially if he signs his extension with the Mets, I feel there's a good possibility when it's all said and done, we could be seeing a number 20 hanging up there with the retired numbers.
While we've been talking for this meme that I saw earlier today, and I can't find it right now, so I'll just explain it to you because I wanted to break down how stupid this meme was. And it's a meme that a Met fan created that obviously does not like Pete Alonso and was trying to say, hey, we've made this mistake 3 or 4 times in the past. Let's not make it again, right? So this is what they put. 2011, and it showed David Wright and Jose Reyes. And it says, Met fans, oh, sign him. And then the Mets don't trade him and they get nothing for him. Well, first off, the Mets had to sign David Wright back then because David Wright was the best player that they had, and he was the cornerstone of the organization. So nobody could have known that a year and a half later he was going to hurt his back. So you can't knock the Mets for that. And by the way, the Mets shouldn't have traded Jose Reyes because they should have paid him, right? I mean, Jose Reyes should have never left. The guy won the batting title, and then they let him sign with Miami. Like, Jose Reyes should have never left the Mets organization.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel Jose Reyes I feel like he could have even put bigger numbers had he not gotten that. It just felt like Reyes always got hamstring injuries all the time in his career.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, the Mets should have paid him. They shouldn't have traded him. And then I'm looking, and then if you keep going down the meme, it says 2015. The Mets should have traded Harvey. First off, if the Mets traded Harvey in 2015, genius, they don't go to the World Series. Second off, Harvey also was like a freak accident. And guess what? If they traded him, they could have gotten something crazy for that at the time. Yeah, I guess so. But who could have seen the fall off of Harvey? I feel like he's kind of in a category of his own. And then at the bottom, it showed Jacob deGrom, Zach Wheeler, and who was the other guy? It was deGrom, Wheeler, and Syndergaard. And they said the Mets should have traded those guys too. And it's like, first off, Jacob deGrom turned into the best pitcher in baseball under the Mets the last couple of years. There's no way they should have traded him. It's ridiculous to even say that. And B, Zach Wheeler the Mets shouldn't have traded either. They should have paid him the $120 million Philadelphia did, and he'd still be here right now, one of the best pitchers in baseball. By the way, Zach Wheeler pitched in the World Series last year, and he was pitching in Game 6 of the NLCS this year. So I think Zach, the Mets would be pretty lucky to have Zach Wheeler on this team. And, Noah Syndergaard fell off a cliff. Okay, maybe they're right about that. But what about the other guys? I can't believe that people are even making those comparisons. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. I really feel that if about Zach Wheeler, if Steve Cohen owned the Mets back then, I feel two things would have happened. Number one, with Mets. Number two, Bryce Harper would have been a Met had Steve Cohen on the team.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan. You're breaking up a little bit there for a sec. Oh, yeah, I can hear you. But yeah, man, I totally agree. I think that Bryce Harper would be a Met. I think, it's just a shame that Steve Cohen didn't buy this team a couple of years old, earlier. But the Wilpons had the death grip on it and weren't letting go. But yeah, so I think me and you laid our case out pretty well. We do not want Pete Alonso, and it would be ridiculous to do so. And the organization would be setting themselves back, multiple years. And with that, Dan, I think let's keep rolling along here, as I want to turn our attention to some football now. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, which they can subscribe for how much a month, Dan?
$5, by the way, $5. It's less than what you probably pay if you went. If any Jets fans watching this went to the game on Sunday, that's less than what you paid on New Jersey Transit to get to MetLife Stadium.
Exactly. So only $5, and you would have had the opportunity to see our post game shows for both the Jets and the Giants. And unfortunately, it was a kind of crappy football weekend here in New York for our teams. We'll kick it off with your team, Dan, and Big Blue. Giants go out to Las Vegas, drop one to Antonio Pierce and the Vegas Raiders, 30-6. It was an ugly game that saw Daniel Jones get hurt. And unfortunately, now we know that Daniel Jones has a torn ACL, and he's going to be out for the year. Dan, did you have a little inkling of that? Or when you heard that it was a torn ACL, were you completely shocked?
I was just like, I just knew like the moment that injury, it looked bad when I saw it. I was following the Giants game on and off because for those who don't know, last Sunday I was on a Davey Mack sports program, so it took like a lot of hours to get there, get Dave to pick me up from the train station to drive me to the venue where they do the Davey Mack sports program. Then the return trip drive me back to the New Jersey Transit station and waiting for getting on a New Jersey Transit back. But what happened was on the way back, of course, to the train station, of course, we had the Giants game on in the car. So I'm hearing it, and then I'm watching it on my phone via the Fox Sports app. I'm watching the game on my phone, and I could tell you it was just disgusting what I've seen on screen. I mean, maybe I could like seen that it was just a blowout. Daniel Jones hurt, and then somewhere during that, like I think maybe somewhere toward the end of the second quarter or something like that, I was the train, the Jersey Transit train went underground. Then it was at the point where I get the subway back, back to Woodside, get the bus. So it wasn't until I was above ground again that I got to see the rest of the game, and it was maybe the fourth or quarter, maybe late third, maybe fourth quarter, and oh my God, it was like a disgust. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. My eyes were saved from what I saw, but I can tell you what I did see when Daniel Jones got hurt, and I just knew, this might as well, we're tanking the rest of the year, it feels like.
Yeah, unfortunately, that word tanking has come up a lot. with the Giant fans. And as soon as you saw Daniel Jones go down, and the thing that makes it even worse is that now Tyrod Taylor is out for an extended period too. They even asked Dable if there's a chance, because right now he's on IR. So this game against the Raiders was the first game he missed. So technically he only has to miss another 3 games, and then he could be eligible to come back. But Brian Daboll said at this point he's not even sure if that's going to be a possibility for Tyrod. He had those broken ribs, so obviously that's a serious injury. So we'll really have to keep an eye out for that. But in response to this Daniel Jones injury, now the Giants obviously had to make a move and bring in another quarterback, because you just can't leave Tommy DeVito out there by himself. Although it looks like Tommy DeVito will remain as the starter, they did sign quarterback Jacob Eason to the Giants practice squad, and backup quarterback now Matt Barkley, the former USC quarterback, is now going to be the Giants backup to Tommy DeVito. So Tommy DeVito will now get his second consecutive start. He'll be appearing in his third consecutive game, starting with that first one against the Jets. So just a definitely an uncertain situation with the Giants quarterback. Let me ask you this, Dan, because there's a lot of talk that we're going to get into in a couple of minutes about the Jets and their quarterback situation. But with Tommy DeVito, you've seen a lot out of him the last couple of weeks now, so you kind of know what you have in him. If it's up to you, if you're Coach Bobo, if you're the head coach of the New York Football Giants, are you going to stick with Tommy DeVito and say, hey, let's see what we got in this kid? Or would you be more inclined to go to a guy like Matt Barkley, who's a veteran in the NFL, can move the ball a little bit, and at least maybe would give the Giants offense a better chance, in theory at least? Like, what do you think about that?
I just feel like I would probably go with Matt Barkley. I don't know, just seeing the Tommy DeVito a little bit more, just felt like if I'm gonna have to rely on a backup quarterback the rest of the year, I feel like I need to go with one that has at least some NFL experience. I feel like, and
yeah.
The only time I'm bringing in a rookie quarterback is if it's like someone that, let's say, maybe that quarterback that has high expectations. But this isn't the case. It's the backup quarterback that is probably we got to go. We'd have to go with Matt Barkley.
Yeah, and I agree with you. We're going to talk about this from the Jets' perspective in a little bit, but I do totally agree with you. This is a guy, Matt Barkley, who don't forget. This guy's been in the league for 10 years. He debuted with Philly about 2013, 2014, right around there. And even though he hasn't appeared in an NFL game in a couple of years, this is a guy that's been on, NFL rosters over the last couple of years. He was on, obviously on Halloween, he just got brought into the Giants, but he was even on the Buffalo Bills last year as Josh Allen's backup. So this is a guy that, has been around NFL teams and NFL offenses for the last decade. And, I don't want to take anything away from Tommy DeVito, but I think we all kind of know that Tommy DeVito doesn't really have a bright future in the NFL. He might bounce around as a backup. He might, show some flashes here and there, but Tommy DeVito's not going to stick around. So, yeah, I agree with you that if it were up to me, I'd probably start Matt Barkley. But maybe the Giants are just figuring, hey, why see what we already, the season, for all intents and purposes, might be just about close to being over at 7 losses right now. So maybe let's just see what we have in Tommy DeVito and season be damned. Maybe they are kind of in full tank mode right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I just feel like that's what it is, and unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to deal with Cowboy fans laughing and trolling those dumb Cowboys fans, and I just feel bad for my half brother David in living in Cowboys territory. He lives in Cowboys territory. And he's a Giants fan, so it's got to be 10 times worse than for him than it is for me having to deal with Cowboy fans.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, and it's going to be a tough task for the Giants as they're going to be out in Dallas this week. But one more thing actually before we move on from the Giants, Dan, I want to get your opinion on this. Something very interesting that came out just in the last 24 to 48 hours. Giants defensive back Xavier McKinney criticized the leadership in the Giants locker room and said that their voices aren't being heard, and that might be a partial criticism of the leadership in the Giants locker room and the Giants coaching staff. So, I mean, I don't know, Dan. Also, just to give full context here, a lot of the Giants veterans in that locker room pushed back on that and said that they don't think that's true. And it seems like a lot of these guys are really trying to hold the ship together. When you hear a player on your team say something like that, what do you think about that, Dan?
I just feel like it's kind of what happens when you're going through such a bad stretch, when it's lows and lows. That's when this really starts to really hit you. I feel like it trickles down to the players. I feel like when the lows happen, just things just really start to get chaotic in the locker room.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, we saw it last year with the Jets, and me and you did the whole season last year. And how many times did you see me pulling my hair out and talking about unrest in the Jets locker room? And I totally agree with you. Sometimes it trickles down, and it has to start with the coaching staff. So yeah, I think I totally agree with you on that, man. I think we're gonna keep it moving along here right now. And real quick, score check for the Knicks game with 4 minutes left in the first half. The Knicks currently lead 54-33 over San Antonio. So a 21-point lead for the Knickerbockers in the first half of that game. Off to a pretty good start. We'll get to the Knicks, a little bit at the end of the show. But before we get into that, I want to talk some Jets now, Dan, as there have been some ridiculous things that have come out over the last 24, 48 hours, with the Jets as well. So the Jets, obviously, Monday Night Football go in and drop to the Chargers 27-6. Jets fall to 4-4. Chargers improve to 4-4. So the Jets muddy up their playoff waters even more there with that loss, where they really had a chance to solidify themselves as a legit contender with both Miami and Buffalo losing this weekend. But the Jets were not able to take control of that. And once again, Zach Wilson had a terrible game. You look at the numbers, very superficial, 33 of 49 for 263 yards. And, let me ask you something, Dan, real quick. It's a rhetorical question, but, when you think about it, it's like when you see, hell, you had Eli Manning on your team. When you saw Eli Manning have a day where he was completing 30-plus passes, or Peyton Manning, or Aaron Rodgers in his prime, and Brett Favre, and all, Tom Brady, all these great quarterbacks, when they have a day like that where they complete 30-plus passes, that means they're throwing for 350, 400, maybe even 500 yards on a crazy day, right? Zach Wilson completed 33 passes for 263 yards, and most of that was garbage time at the end, dunking it off to Michael Carter that the Chargers were letting them have just to bleed the last 4 minutes off the clock. So, in my opinion, some people were pointing to the fact that, Zach had 33 completions. Yeah, for basically 250 yards. He should have had double that with that many completions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those I feel, don't let those numbers fool you in those stats. Yesterday's game, it was a horrible game. I think one of my friends who's a Jets fan was at that game, and I just feel like he saw something horrible. I feel like everyone in that stadium felt horrible after that game. I'm sure you took all your strength not to throw shit at the TV, because that is just that must have been absolute disgusting. What in the mind of what I imagine every Jets fan, including yourself, saw at that game. And I just feel like now the the Jets are in a situation where they're 2 losses away from being eliminated, I feel like.
Well, look, the AFC is going to be tough, so I don't look. I can't even necessarily disagree with you because, to be honest, there's a mark on the calendar for the Jets now, and it's 8 losses. I feel like if the Jets can stay at or under 8 losses, which means they're going to have 9 or more wins, if they're at least on track for that, then, as we heard after the game of Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers said that he was going to be back in a couple of weeks. Now, he went on McAfee the next day and talked about how maybe that meant a couple of fortnights, and everybody's starting to look at things. People are looking at maybe the Christmas Eve game against the Commanders, maybe the December 28th game against the Chiefs. Sorry, not the Chiefs, the Browns in Cleveland. So, there's a lot of opportunities now where people are starting to look at that schedule and break down a realistic chance when Rodgers could come back. But the fact of the matter is, if the Jets go out there and crap the bed the next couple of weeks and they end up being, 4-7 or something like that, like you said, even 4-6, that's not going to look good for Rodgers because why would Rodgers want to come back if the team's not in playoff spot, right?
Yeah, I just feel like if things start going more south downhill, I feel like Rodgers might maybe want to maybe take his time coming back from that injury, not rush it, maybe to increase the chances of and maybe realize that might be a better decision to go maybe not rushing it to increase his chances of maybe recovering better.
Yeah.
Even though it looks like if he came back early enough, he would recover from, but I feel like maybe he might not want to rush it if this keeps going. If this goes downhill even further.
Yeah, you're right, man. And the really just tease that Jet fans have been getting is Rodgers throwing on the field before game, and man, he looked really good on Monday throwing that ball. He was throwing it 58 yards with ease. Man, Chad Pennington, I used to love the guy. He couldn't do that in his prime with the fixed right arm, before he kept getting hurt. So, man, Rodgers is just a hell of an athlete, hell of a quarterback. But, the quarterback position is so important. We talked about it at length for the Giants. Now we're going to talk about it a little bit for the Jets too, at length, a little bit more, because Robert Saleh had the most bizarre 24 hours that I've ever seen for a Jet head coach. And this is a guy who saw Bill Belichick get hired as head coach and then resign 24 hours later on a napkin that he wrote, "I resign as HC of the NYJ." That's how Belichick left the Jets, by the way. Real professional, Bill. But yeah, so this is a guy who's seen a lot over my 25, 30 years of rooting for the Jets. And this was one of the weirdest days I've ever seen. So Robert Saleh is asked at his press conference, are the Jets planning on elevating the practice squad quarterback who they signed after the awful Patriots game, Trevor Siemian, who's an NFL quarterback. He has the same amount of starts in the NFL as Zach Wilson, except the fact that he's thrown double the amount of touchdowns in that time. He's got 42. Wilson's only thrown 20. And Saleh said that they're not planning on elevating Siemian from the practice squad, that Zach Wilson was the unquestioned starter on Sunday, which just made people's heads explode, that you wouldn't even have a safety net behind Zach Wilson, who has been awful this year. But then he goes on the Michael Kay show and gives this ridiculous response to a very easy question that Michael Kay asked him, just in response to how every other quarterback they've put in there over the last 3 years, aside from Zach, has actually been good. Josh Johnson was good in 2021 when he filled in. Joe Flacco was better than Zach Wilson. Mike White was better than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's the only one that keeps sucking. And this was, I can't just, you have to see it for yourself. You have to see it for yourself. Just listen to this. It's going to start off with Robert Saleh giving his thing, and then it's going to have the Michael Kay thing. But just listen to this. I still can't believe that he actually said this.
there areas of the field where we could have been better for him as a play caller? Sure. Are there areas on the field where we could have been better as position coaches, putting our players in position? Yes. Could the players have been better from an execution standpoint, catching the ball, blocking, running the right routes, being more efficient in the run game? Absolutely. So if this was, and sometimes it's very obvious when you turn on the all-22 that the quarterback is just incapable, but it's not the case here, and
which, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Saleh. That should have been obvious because Zach Wilson has been terrible all season. He's been one of, if not the worst quarterbacks in football for the last 3 years.
There are so many things that everybody needs to get better at, including the quarterback. And I think that's, it's what, I don't know. Hopefully, I'm answering your question, but it's not always
now, this
as easy
is
as
where Kay.
Like I said, the three heads that get rocked the most in the losses, starting with me, then the play caller, and the quarterback. It's just that's all natural.
But things have changed over 3 years, Robert. You've had different offensive coordinators before the change to Hackett this year, and you've had different weapons around him, and the one constant is Zach, and the one constant is last year he couldn't start over Mike White. So, first of all, this shouldn't be litigated. Now, I never understood with a 39-year-old quarterback why a guy who couldn't start last year was the first line of defense if he went down. You've got Trevor Siemian in your building. Why not give him a try?
No, I got you. No, it's again a fair question. And it's like I said, he I don't know. You got me. I'm gonna plead the fifth on all this one in terms of just.
Are you kidding me? I don't know. You got me. I'm gonna plead the fifth. That's your answer to why you're not elevating a better quarterback of the practice squad? Dan, can you even believe what he just said? That's insane.
Yeah, I can't believe this. All right, he really needs to go up. He probably needs to go into practice and go with someone because Zach Wilson ain't making the cut as far as I see it. He's not getting the job done.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're right. Zach Wilson's not getting the job done. Robert Saleh knows that. So, to me, this is what that quote could mean. And I don't know. There's only one of these options that I like, and I guess you'll know exactly which one it is. But the only thing I can think of is that either A, Joe Douglas, the Jets GM, is forcing Robert Saleh against his will to play Zach Wilson, which, by the way, Robert Saleh came out today and said that's not the case, and they're on the same page. So either that's the case or Robert Saleh is a liar. Other than that, it could also be that maybe Saleh is lying in gamesmanship way, where he knows full well that they are going to elevate Siemian for Sunday's game, but they're just not going to tell anybody they're doing that until Saturday when they have to. So, what do you think about that, Dan? What do you think? Do you think Douglas is forcing this, or do you think that something else is going on?
I just feel like it's just the GM. I feel there's people above the coach's head that are thinking that are just obsessed with trying to prove they're right about having Zach Wilson as this starter until Rodgers gets back, if he gets back.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's true. So, I mean, that was just a mind-boggling. Like I said, I saw that with Belichick. I've seen Rich Kotite as the Jets coach. I've seen Adam Gase as the Jets coach. Now, I don't think that Robert Saleh is as bad a head coach as those guys are, but man, that was a bizarre moment, and a bizarre moment that I've only seen from a handful of those other guys. So, let's just hope that Saleh has the pulse of this team, because right now, with that answer, at least, he certainly doesn't have the pulse of the fan base. So, with that, we'll keep it rolling along here. Jets end up losing that one 27-6, like we mentioned, to the Chargers. So just to wrap up the football, Giants are going to be playing the Cowboys at 4:25 next Sunday, and the Jets are going to be playing on Sunday Night Football in Las Vegas against the Raiders. So we'll be coming at you live following that Jets-Raiders game to recap the full day of NFL events here in New York. But before we finish up here, Dan, because we're just about out of time before we wrap up tonight, I do want to touch on our New York Rangers because, man, the Rangers under their new head coach, Peter Laviolette, have been off to a hell of a start. And it's a start that, although you look at that record, they won 5-3 against the Red Wings. They're 9-2-1 so far this season. Loving this great start, but this has not come at an easy, price for the Rangers, as so far they have been, really knocked around injuries, as Filipino and Adam Fox are both on IR. Hedl came into the season as their 2 center, and Adam Fox is their best defenseman. He's down. Right now, also Igor Shesterkin is banged up, and they also just recalled from Hartford Louis Domingue and Adam Huska, the 2 goaltenders down there, because apparently Jonathan Quick, who's been great so far, 3-0 with a 1.77 goals against as a Ranger, he apparently got banged up last night. So now it's a possibility that if Igor isn't back for the next game on Thursday, that Louis Domingue, who, if you remember, was starting against the Rangers in the playoffs for the Pittsburgh Penguins 2 years ago, could be making his first start as a Ranger on Thursday night. So a lot of injuries so far this season, Dan, but the Rangers are finding ways to win.
I'm just holding my breath here about this because this is getting me nervous here that we've had to go to our 3rd string goalie now. And just hoping this doesn't blow up in our face. Please, Igor, be back for the next game. Please be back.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments, man.
I agree, and hopefully Jonathan Quick is maybe just more of a day-to-day situation. He's back. He'll be ready for when we need him. That's all I'm hoping for, because I'm already annoyed with that. I'm already annoyed by the Carolina Hurricanes for injuring 3 players of ours. I'm talking about you, Sebastian Aho. You're on the Scheidler list. I expect to see the fists flying the next time the Rangers and Hurricanes cross paths.
Yeah, that's true, man. I mean, the Hurricanes, the Rangers beat them 2-1 last week at the Garden, but unfortunately, like you said, that was a costly game as they ended up losing a couple of players. They ended up losing the next game too that they played to the Wild. That was a wild game, if you will, as the Rangers had a 3-0 lead, blew it, and ended up losing in overtime. So that was a tough game. I think the injuries and everything had a lot to do with that one as well. But you know what, Dan? Hey, the name of the game is, I always heard from hockey coaches and guys in the know of hockey, specifically the NHL, that in October and November, those months, you can't put yourself in the playoffs that early. But if you have a really crappy first 2 months, you can sure as hell take yourself out of that mix pretty quickly if you really tank it the first month or two. So luckily what the Rangers are doing right now is they're finding themselves in a tough spot, but they're getting wins, they're getting points, and they're putting points in their back pocket because, hey, we all know every year how close these NHL playoff standings are. So every point you can get is extremely meaningful, right?
Yeah, exactly. Every one you could get's gonna mean it in the end, and hopefully we keep this up, and hopefully when we get more closer to December, we'll start talking about the Rangers being relevant and starting to look like a complete team. Believe me, I want to still be talking about us maybe being a cup and a playoff contender going into that big outdoor game we're attending.
Exactly. You got that right, man. We got that big game coming up in February as the Rangers take on the Islanders at MetLife. We're going to be there having a great time. And you know who else is going to be there, Dan, and who could be vying for a Hart Trophy at that point, which is, if you don't know, the MVP in the NHL. Artemi Panarin, man, look at this. This guy so far this season has been incredible. The run that he is on, really, really phenomenal. I can't even put into words the year that Artemi Panarin has had, especially with what a disappointing run he's really had over the last year or two. Even, I mean, he'd always be getting the points, but it seemed to me like he wasn't as big of a difference maker as he was his first year, which it looks like he really is that difference maker again this year. I mean, the guy's on pace for 130 points so far. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. He played at a whole other level. Like, I just knew that there's greatness in this player, and we're seeing it. And I feel we're lucky to have this guy on our team. And yep, exactly. And this guy already in his career as a Rangers has led to some big moments that have led to me going nuts. I mean, we all remember that playoff game, first round, gets Pittsburgh in 2020, 2022. That game that year I was just I was literally going nuts. Like, you could, I swear, I was going nuts. Balloonigan was barking, and me making loud noise celebrating. So it was that was a great memory. I just hope we're gonna have big moments, and hopefully Panarin and the rest of the Rangers can keep this up and put me in a situation where I'm gonna have a very thick playoff beard.
Exactly, man. You got that right. As the Rangers looking to get back in the playoffs now, and Artemi Panarin, 7 goals, 13 points to start the season. That's exactly the type of offensive production that they need out of their highest paid, and if not one of the most valuable players on this team in really every sense that you can make it. So definitely big stretch and great start to the season for the Rangers. And finally, before we get out of here, Dan, I do want to touch on the Knicks for a second. But by the way, if you're wondering, the Spurs were able to close the gap a little bit as the Knicks lead is down to 14. Still not too bad. 65-51 at the half right now. The Knicks coming off a big 111-97 comeback win against the Clippers on Monday, where Julius Randle really first started to show, that he has a pulse this season. RJ Barrett put up 26. He's been a constant source of offense this season. It's really encouraging to see that right now, in my opinion. I mean, Jalen Brunson is still their best player, in my opinion. But I think right now, one of their most consistent offensive weapons has been RJ Barrett. And you got to give the kid credit for that, right?
Yeah, I feel like this most of the season so far, RJ Barrett is carrying the Knicks on his back. And I just feel right now we look like, I guess right now we look like an okay team, but I feel like we need to make a big move at the trading deadline. I feel like to keep this up, to hopefully get this team to another level and have a deep playoff run.
No doubt about it, man. I think the Knicks are in position right now with the draft capital they have. Although, you can debate on how great that draft capital is. They certainly have a lot of it. So you'd hope that the Knicks have the room to make a deal to bring in maybe that the Knicks need one more star. If you added one more big name to this mix right now, the Knicks could potentially be in that championship category. So definitely a lot of good things going right now for the Knicks. So obviously, like I said, they're 3-4 right now, but with the lead tonight, they're hoping to even their record at 4-4. So yeah, I mean, Dante DiVincenzo looks pretty good. Emmanuel Quickly has been very, very good off the bench. He potentially could be a sixth man of the year contender. And right now, if you were gonna make a guess right now, Dan, if the Knicks were going to be in the playoffs, yes or no, what do you think?
I just feel like right now the Knicks I feel like they could make the playoffs. I just feel they need to make that one move to win in the playoffs.
See, I totally agree. That's you put that perfectly, because I feel like right now the Knicks are probably like a 43 to a 46 win team. But I feel if they make that one move me and you were talking about, whatever that move may be, if they're bringing in some kind of big piece, I feel like if it's the right piece, that could put the Knicks into the 50 win or so category. What do you think about that?
Yeah, exactly. I feel that if they make that right move, this team's going to a whole other level.
Yeah. I mean, they have a bunch of great pieces, and in my opinion, they still have a really great coach too, in Tom Thibodeau. So, the Knicks are in good hands right now. The Rangers are in good hands right now. Things are looking pretty good over at Madison Square Garden, Dan. And I think that's just about going to do it for us today. So, before we get out of here, do you have anything you'd like to plug for yourself?
Sure, I got to plug my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC. Of course, also on Instagram, Bobo718DK. YouTube's one word, Daniel Curlin. You're also gonna get a really funny video on my YouTube account pretty soon. Which, by the way, all you people who subscribe to the Patreon are gonna get early access to this video once it's done. And by the way, if you do want to subscribe to that Patreon to get access to this early video plus our football post game shows, $5, just $5. It's a great deal. That's less than a Big Mac, which by the way is ridiculous. $18 for a Big Mac.
Oh my God.
I don't know what's going on there. You heard about this, right?
I didn't. I haven't had a Big Mac in years, but yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. I haven't really done a Big Mac in years. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I like getting my burgers mostly from like mom and pop places. That do the burgers fresh. But I just feel like fast food burgers. I just feel like there's some fast food restaurants that do a better job with the burger than usually McDonald's. Like I don't know why. I think I'm gonna. Because trust me, there's a couple of good places that do a decent better burger. So it's like I feel like some restaurants have raised the bar high for burgers that I would want to go to a. I feel like a McDonald's is the only thing that's open. It's one of those things. Like it's not really kind of last choice for a burger these days.
I hear you on that. And everybody, don't forget to check out Dan on the Davey Mack Sports program, which on his appearance that was just this past week. So do yourself a favor, if you haven't subscribed to Dave's Patreon or his YouTube page, check him out, Eastside Dave TV on YouTube, and Davey Mack Sports program on Patreon. So check that out. Thank you very much. Also, if you as Dan mentioned, if you haven't subscribed yet, please check us out, patreon.com/Best Seat in the House podcast. Also, Twitter, check us out, BSith_podcast, and on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, you can check me out on Twitter, my last name, Cramer, NY. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to episode 88. I feel like 88, we should have some kind of Back to the Future tie-in. So, I guess it's going to be like, 88 miles an hour. We're going to get out of here. We're going back to the future, Dan. And you know what's going to happen when we go back to the future? We're going to go all the way back to 1994, and the New York Rangers are going to win the Stanley Cup again, right? What do you say about that?
Yep, exactly. I hope that happens. I hope come season end we could party like it's 1994.
I couldn't have thought of a better way to end the show than that. So with those words, Dan, we're going to party like it's 1994. And for Daniel Bobo Curlin and Rob Cramer, thanks for watching the Best Seat in the House podcast, and we'll catch you next week, everybody.